Hi, and welcome to another Q&A session on PianoTV, where you guys ask me questions and I do my best to try to answer them. So this is a place where I like to answer questions that don't necessarily warrant an entire video, but I want to discuss them anyway, because you guys always have lots of great questions that I like to address, and I think that the questions you ask will help other people as well who might be wondering the same thing. So let's get started. So I want to answer a couple questions here, and then we'll hop over to the piano for the last two questions, because we're going to look at 4. I think that's a good number. A little more than 3, a little less than 5. That's the number 4. Anyway, so I'm going to paraphrase these questions just to simplify them. So the first thing I want to talk about is, what do I think of Will Barrows' Learn and Master Piano DVDs? Now, I wanted to bring this one up because I've only ever talked about a couple adult course books, and they're just books. It's the Alfred's All-in-One that I like to use, and I also like to use the Piano Adventures for Adults books. But I understand that sometimes adult beginners, especially those without a teacher, want to have more guidance, and this is what the course offers. So I wanted to look into it and see if it was something that I could recommend, if it looked good. So basically, Will Barrows, like this highly respected piano player guy who has like a really crazy, amazing resume, and it's a series of CDs and DVDs as well as a book, kind of like everything all in one. So the cool thing about his program is that he has DVDs of all the songs and tutorials. So if it helps you to learn by ear, which is like most of us, then you'll find that useful. And there's also play along CDs. So if you learn a song, and they're famous, so a lot of the songs you'll have like the Beatles or things like that, you can play along your piano part to like a full band accompaniment, which I think is a really, really useful thing to have. Now, just kind of looking through the topics that he covers, it's mainly chord based. So this would be a good program if you were interested in like jazz and blues and modern styles that use a lot of chords. I mean, there's a couple classical things that he addresses. There's a little bit of like harmonizing and stuff like that, but it wouldn't be necessarily an amazing gateway into classical music. It would be more of a gateway into contemporary music. So that's something to consider. But at least he does teach you how to read music, which some programs don't. So anyway, that's a long way of saying check it out. It's kind of expensive, but if you don't have a teacher and you want something more in depth, definitely look into Will Barrows' Learn and Master Piano series. All right, so the next question, why do piano players and musicians choose the keys that they write in? How do they decide what key signature to play in, to paraphrase? I actually had no idea how to answer this at first because I didn't know, so I did a little bit of research. And then a couple things started falling into place. So a lot of it has to do with practical issues. So what is your instrument? If you're a guitar player, it's going to be easier for you to write a song in the key of E or the key of A, just because the chords kind of, you can play them more open. I'm not a guitar player, but whereas the key of, say, E flat on guitar would be a little bit more challenging unless you're using a capo. Whereas on piano, the key of C, for example, would be really easy because there's no sharps and flats. So a lot of composers will write in like the key signatures with less sharps and flats, just because they're easier to understand. And part of it for me has to do with vocal range. So on the keyboard, my range, kind of my loud belty range, kind of caps off at like a B flat or a B. So I don't like to play in F major as much as I like to play in E flat major, because F major means my high note is a C. That's a really powerful note, but it's a little too high for me. So again, there's practical considerations when you're songwriting. Another thing that I found really, really interesting, there's this whole website. It's on a website called Bite Your Own Elbow. It's the characteristics of musical keys. And basically what they did is they compiled a bunch of research and writings on the different like sort of emotional sounds of each key based on like writings from the 1800s and 1900s. So it's worth a read. It's really interesting. So for example, the key of C major is considered like a very pure kind of clean sound, whereas D minor, I'm reading this verbatim, melancholy womanliness, the spleen and humor's brood. I don't even know what that means, but it's kind of interesting. And another comparison that composers like Amy Beach have made over time is that sounds can be associated with colors. So they hear key signatures as corresponding with different colors. So for example, red is consistently linked with the key of C major. People hear C major as red. That's more of a synthesia thing, I think, but it's really, really cool. Okay, so the next question is, I am learning a piece with octave jumps or large leaps. Should I look at my hands while I play or not? Yes, to both. I like doing a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. When you do not have your song memorized, when you are looking at the music in front of you, you want to keep your eyes on the music as constantly as possible, because if you're looking up, I don't know what your notes might be. Say you're leaping from a C to an E, a 10-note jump. If that's what's in your music but you don't have it memorized and you're like constantly looking up and down, you'll lose your place in the music and it can create like a really jarring effect. It's like the note reading whiplash effect with your neck. You don't want that. But even if you have it memorized, if you're staring at your hands while you play, that's fine, but it's important to also build in like a physical understanding of what the leap is. So even if I'm doing a memorized performance, I look at my hands. I don't play like this for the most part, especially if I'm doing jumps, because I just think that's kind of pointless. But I do practice without looking sometimes, because you want to just build in the feel of the leap so that when you're running on adrenaline, if you're performing, your hands kind of know where to go without you having to direct them. I think it's really important. So when you do leaps, it's really important to leap in an arc. And however big the leap is depends on like how high your arc goes, and it also depends on the volume. But for the most part, you just want like a gentle semicircle. I hope you can see that in the video what I'm doing there. So if I'm jumping from a C to an E, kind of go in a small arc as opposed to like straight across, because it's just more accurate and you can kind of memorize the feeling of an arc physically without looking. So I might practice this jump a few times to feel out the arc, and then I'll close my eyes and try it. So I went a little bit too far. I'll try that again. Okay, so once you can do it slow, then you can do it fast, and so on. So yes to both. Practice without looking just to get better at the physical sensations of what you're playing, but also it's okay to practice and look at your hands too. All right, and question number 4. Where should I put my fingers on the piano when I'm playing chords? So this especially applies to chords that have black keys in them. So what I notice with my students is there's a tendency to play chords, whether it's like a 3-note chord or a 4-note chord, to play kind of like with a straight on, like your wrist is completely straight. You're not doing any angling or anything like that. So what happens if you're playing black keys and white keys in a chord, like in this 4-note chord, and you keep your wrist like straight and not angled, is the fingers have to go really deep into the keys. Like they're going in between the black keys. And I mean, this isn't ideal, because the closer to the edge you get, the harder it is to press the note. It's much easier and much more sensitive to press a key like right on the edge. So we want to keep our fingers from going past this line where the black keys and the white keys meet. So if you're playing in between the keys, you're playing a little bit too deep. You're just going to make life tough for yourself. So what I do, instead of playing like with that straight on approach, and see how these fingers are, I'm going to roll up my sleeves so you can see what I'm doing. See how these fingers are really deep in this C minor chord? What I would do, first of all, pull it back so that I'm just on the bare edge of the black key. And my other finger is right on the edge too. Okay? So this is like awkward claw spider hand, and this is like a much more comfortable. So pull your fingers back as best you can. When you're playing black keys, you generally want to stay to the edge. So another chord, it can be awkward when you have a black key on the top or bottom. So like B flat's an example. I'll just do the 3-note version. So again, the tendency is to play it like with your wrist locked forward. So then you end up with your middle finger like really, really deep into the keys, which leaves you prone to making mistakes. So again, you want to pull it back. But this time, when you pull back to the edge of the black key and keep it straight, it's a really, really awkward shape. You try this at home, you'll know what I mean. So if you're playing like your thumb or pinky on a black key, you need to rotate your wrist a little bit to accommodate that, so that your fingers are like on an angle like this, like from here to the edge. You see how I'm rotating like that? Okay, so I'm not like moving my entire arm or elbow, I'm just kind of rotating my wrist over a little bit. And same thing when I'm swinging. You can see how my fingers kind of form a diagonal when I'm playing a black key on top. So you want to have a flexible rotating wrist when you're playing chords as opposed to playing all your chords with exactly the same wrist positioning. Do you see the difference? Right? So I don't know, hopefully that helps a little bit. Keep your wrist flexible when you're playing. And that is all for today's video. I will say goodbye to you from the piano because I just happen to be sitting here. So hopefully you found something useful in these questions, and as always, feel free to leave more questions in the little comment area below, because I like to read through and see what you're curious to learn and stuff like that. And I'll probably do a Q&A session like this monthly or like around that. So anyway, give this video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you guys next time. So